I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, and welcome to another episode of our Harry Potter month, which is the month where we'll be reviewing all of the main 8 movies, as well as Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which gets its opening day tomorrow here in the UK. We're really looking forward to that, and there'll be a bunch of other videos out too. Our review today is on Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, which is the 2007 movie directed by David Yates, based on the book of the same name by J.K. Rowling. And as always, these videos are very much a spoiler-filled discussion. We kind of sit down, just have a back and forth about Harry Potter and the movie in general. So if you haven't seen Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, or indeed any of the other ones, where have you been all this time? But you will be spoiled all the way through. So the plot for this one, reading off IMDb on this, is: with their warning about Lord Voldemort's return scoffed at, Harry and Dumbledore are targeted by the wizard authorities as an authoritarian bureaucrat slowly seizes power at Hogwarts. Now, just going from that, you can tell this is the most political one probably out of all 8 of them. This is the stage where we've got a new director coming in from Goblet of Fire, with David Yates coming in. This was actually his first theatrical movie he'd ever done. He'd done a lot of TV before this, such as The Bill in the UK and a lot of other short films like that. So God knows the kind of task that he was given with this movie, given the Harry Potter franchise. But this is the director now that takes us, home run all the way through until the last Harry Potter movie, and indeed all of the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movies now. So we usually start these things off with an introduction and our memories on the film itself. So, George, memories on Order of the Phoenix, book and the movie.
This is the weirdest one, in which I never saw this at the cinema like Goblet of Fire. I really wanted to watch it at the cinema. Unfortunately, my family were taken to watch Fantastic Beasts. What? Fantastic Four. Yes, it was close. Rise of the Silver Surfer, that amazing sequel.
Oh boy!
Instead of Order of the Phoenix, which I was devastated at. Obviously, when you're 12 years old, you don't really have a lot of money, so you can't just go and disappear and watch it on your own. Although I did do that same year for Transformers 1.
We know how you feel about the Transformers movies.
Yes.
I'm actually tempted. I may as well say it on here now. I'm definitely up for doing a review on all the Transformers movies before the new one comes out. If you are,
I will help you in any review you need.
But let's not bring Transformers up into this one. So you didn't see this at the cinema. You read the book, though, I'm assuming. Did you read it around the same time it came out?
This book is actually one of the best book memories I have in my life. I don't remember reading a single word of it. However, I remember reading it in 3 days on holiday at the age of 2003. I think I read this. So I was 7, and I read this book in 3 days, which is about 250 pages a day, which is absolutely insane, given it's the longest one. It's the most political one, and that's probably why I remember so little of that book until I reread them recently, which I've now finished. I'm so proud to have done it in 2 months, because I just do not read books anymore.
Yeah, no, it's difficult finding the time, especially books of that size.
Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, I've read Deathly Hallows in a week. That's insane. That's 600 pages. I don't have time for that shit. I've been doing uni work, but that's a different story. No, this is a weird one, because I really wanted to watch it at the cinema and I didn't. And then I remember I never even had it on DVD until Half Blood Prince came out. What it is, my neighbour lent me the DVD when it came out, so I did see the film eventually a few months later, and I just remember being mesmerised by some of it. And again, that's because I do not remember the contents of the book. I remember a few little bits here and there, but not as well as I do the other ones once I read them. Again, that might be because I've read them so quickly. There's a lot to take in.
Yeah, and I mean, with this review now, you're going to have the benefit because you've read all these books again very recently. I did read this book when it came out, and I remember around the time... I mean, a character died in Goblet of Fire with Cedric Diggory, but no one sort of really cared. I'm sure some people did, but I remember the announcement for the book where JK said that a major character died at the end of Order of the Phoenix. And I mean, being on the playground, I mean, what year's 2007? I remember everyone sort of covering their ears and not wanting to hear spoilers. Some people had read it, some people hadn't. I remember when I got it originally, I just couldn't wait for it, so I just skipped to the back to find out who died and went like, oh, okay, and then went and read the book itself. This was around the time, though, where I was personally dropping off the Harry Potter franchise. I discovered Lord of the Rings, and that movie was both a blessing and a curse. Blessing because they're my favourite movies of all time, curse because nothing had really come close to that before or since for me. And it was kind of upsetting as well because I loved Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets so much. I love the Azkaban book. The film I'm kind of on. You can watch our review on that one. But Goblet of Fire, the book is huge and the film really didn't do anything for me at the time I watched it. And Order of the Phoenix book is the biggest in the series. I think it's like 755 pages or somewhere around that. It's huge, which is actually kind of weird because although it's the longest book in the series, it's actually the second shortest film. They've cut a lot of stuff out from the book, which we'll talk about later on in our review. But the book I remember just being completely bored by. I was just so done with it, and then I went to see the film sort of out of obligation, and again I didn't care for the film, and that's really after this where I dropped off Harry Potter, and that's when I'll talk about it more in Half-Blood Prince, because that's been a very strange viewing experience for me on that film. This was a film though that I went back to a good few years ago now. I mean, I've watched the films in the last couple of weeks, but I did watch this a good few years before, and when I watched it again I was like, I don't know why I hated this film when I went to see it. It's probably, I mean, it's very difficult. I guess we can do that when we get to Deathly Hallows Part 2 and we can say what our favourite one is, but I would definitely say it's not my least favourite one, it's strange because this is the lowest rated Harry Potter film, I think, out of all of them. I'm just going to check on Rotten Tomatoes now. I think it currently sits at 78%. Which completely baffles me because I think on the whole I prefer this one to Goblet of Fire, and we were sort of having this discussion last time where we were trying to decide which one we preferred. I like the direction and the flow of this one a lot more. However, I think that Goblet of Fire in terms of a story has a lot more content in it. This one's, as we've said, is the most political one and probably the most sparse next to Half-Blood Prince. Both this and Half-Blood Prince feel like bridging movies to me. Half-Blood Prince probably more so than this one, but like when you try and think about the plot of this one, there really doesn't seem to be that much going on, although there are a lot of great new introductions in it. And actually, I wanted to bring this up because this is rather embarrassing. This is an embarrassing fact about my Harry Potter life. When the title had come out that it was going to be Order of the Phoenix, at the time I was very much into fan fiction, and I used to go over my next door neighbour's house, and he was a writer. He wrote a lot of stuff. He's a year older than me, but his writing ability was fantastic. And he was really into Harry Potter as well. And he said one day, let's try and write our own version of what we think Order of the Phoenix is going to be. Bearing in mind we knew no plot details or anything like that. So I can't remember how many pages I wrote in the end. It wasn't many. It was like handwritten on A4. I think I probably wrote like 10 sides of it or something, like the first chapter, and it was very embarrassing, and I interpreted the title in a very different way to what J.K. Rowling did. I had it being like an actual phoenix that Harry had to fight at the end, similar to the basilisk fight from the end of Chamber of Secrets. I had just a giant phoenix. I used to play the John Williams Dueling the Basilisk theme in the background while I was writing it. But one thing I did have, which is in this movie, and we can talk about it when we get into the movie now, I had one of the main three using magic outside of school and getting in trouble for it, which is a big thing involving this movie, which sort of like gets us into the whole Ministry of Magic itself. It's been referred to loads. We've seen Cornelius Fudge in most of the other movies. This is where all that stuff really comes to the forefront in this one.
Yeah, and I like what they do with this. I mean, we'll talk about it as it gets on, but the Dementor subplot is so well done in order to sort of move Harry away from not Hogwarts but to introduce the Ministry of Magic. And I spoke, I think, in the Goblet of Fire or Azkaban review where J.K. Rowling said I needed to create new areas for these people to go to learn more about the world that isn't Hogwarts. I think that was obviously Hogsmeade with revealing Sirius Black, Goblet of Fire, the Quidditch World Cup, and they do it again in this one specifically with finally seeing the Ministry of Magic, because it's spoken about in most films. Even in the first one it's mentioned. So it's one of those where you finally see it, and I love what they do with it. And I think what's most fitting to it is the whole political espionage type sort of not darkness to it, but there's always the background politics going on, and it makes for such an adult-themed film for a kid that's meant to be 16 in this one. He's sitting his wizard version of GCSEs. If you're American, that's basically just our forced, like, Jesus Christ. It's just basically the test you take when you finish school.
Yeah. And
they've got all this drama, then you've got the whole Voldemort, and I just love where they take it when you've got the whole sort of propaganda, the anti-Potter and Dumbledore stuff. The actual Ministry of Magic itself is absolutely wonderful. And I love how they filmed it at an old underground station, with the sleek black tiles and the design of it. It's just so creative, and you kind of wanted to see more of it, and it's well worth the wait when you get there.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm trying to find the information on it, but I think it's it might actually be the biggest set they've ever made for Harry Potter, I think. It's the most expensive set. It was over 200 foot long. It was just like in the terms of the hallway. It's really impressive, and they do a lot of great cinematic shots in this where they do just revel in the fact of how big this set is they've built, and obviously it was been enhanced by CGI, especially during the climax where Dumbledore and Voldemort are having a wizarding fight. They really do play up how big this set is that they've got, and it's great to see all that stuff. And in the book I never really gravitate towards it, but I think in terms of visuals, how they cut it, I think they cut it down effectively in this film. And I know there's quite a lot of stuff in the film that they did cut out, especially involving Gilderoy Lockhart, which I would have loved to have seen, but unfortunately would have been too expensive. They would have had to build an entire new set for it. So some stuff either was filmed or they had the idea of filming it, but sadly didn't follow through with it. One thing I will say about this movie, though, at the start, it is back to the Dursleys. We do see them very briefly in the I think it's like one of the hottest summers or something, isn't it, that they say in the movie that the UK has ever had. Dudley's very weird in this movie at the beginning. It's the same actor. I think he'd lost a lot of weight, though, at this point, hadn't he? So they had to put makeup on him in like a fat suit. But in terms of his personality itself, it's very different to the Dudley we've seen previously. He didn't say anything in Prisoner of Azkaban, but in the first two, he was this very... he was this cowardly, annoying bully of a kid, but he fancied himself, very upper class, very posh. It's like the Dursleys are trying to craft him into this person. In this one, it's very different, and I can't remember if in the book they give reason for that, or if that was just how he played it in this movie.
They say that he was doing boxing and he was doing this stuff, so I guess the whole brain dead thing, but normally it happens 20 years after you finish boxing, not when you're 16. But I know he's kind of stupid and stuff. But you're right, because I prefer him in the younger ones where he's not charming, but he kind of is. He's absolutely hilarious. Yeah. And then in this, it's almost a complete 180, and it looks creepy because they've put him in a fat suit and they've done his makeup. He looks weird anyway. I think it's Harry Mills or something like that, the actor. But it just doesn't really. It works to a degree, but it feels so different from the last time you've seen him. And I guess obviously they grow older and stuff. It's a darker film, but there was just something about the way he even delivered the lines where he couldn't talk English properly. Yeah. And I guess they've got to show he's dumb, but come on, that dumb's just a bit over the top. But
and I would say the Dursleys' impact in terms of the movies pretty much ends with the third one. They're not in the fourth one at all. This one they've only given a bit. I don't think they're in Half-Blood Prince, if I remember rightly. And then a lot of their stuff got cut out in 7, but we'll get onto that when we get to those reviews. You talked about the political stuff. Let's talk about what the actual film's called, The Order of the Phoenix. We finally get Sirius back, and Lupin as well. Lupin wasn't in 4, I don't think, but I like that about the films, and I guess the books as well. They probably get mentions in the books, though. But what I like about how these films flow is that characters will crop up and then you might not see them in the next movie or the next couple of movies, and then they will come back. It's the same with Voldemort, really. I know he was in the other one. He's in it very sparingly in this, and I think that was the best way to go, because you could very easily go Voldemort's back, have him be the main villain in this movie now, but they're very patient. I think it's staggered in a good way, so that when we do get to the finale, it's more justified. I mean, we don't even really get Voldemort in terms of himself in Half-Blood Prince at all. Very much staggered, and that's kind of what the Order's like itself. So when we do see Sirius again, we'd only seen him as a face in the fireplace in the 4th movie. So when you get to this, you do have that moment where Harry sees him again, and it's like that warm embrace they have, and you feel like that as an audience member, because I'm sure you agree, I'm sure a lot of Harry Potter fans agree, Sirius, just Gary Oldman in general, is one of our favourite characters in the Harry Potter franchise.
He's easily in the probably top 3 or 4 best characters as well.
Yeah.
And he just adds this dimension to it. It's the only family Harry's got. Obviously, spoiler alert, he dies in this one, which is the whole tragedy of it. Very similar to the third one, Harry thought he could finally live with him. He gets told that he can eventually live with him in the house, but nope, kind of any of it. And the Order stuff, you're right, it kind of feels like, not like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because it's an awful example, but the way that character can just pop up in another one, it's a nice surprise. With Harry Potter, because it happens so much in the books, you know that they can't do that in every single film. It's expensive, but when the names appear, you kind of hope, and you do get this. And it's that scene where, first of all, Mad Eye turns up, who you wouldn't expect given the events of the fourth film. Then you get Harry being introduced to the whole of the Order. The whole Weasley family's there, Hermione's there, so he's so shocked about kind of everything that's happening. And it's just great seeing him like this, because they need to build this world, and specifically in the fifth one, I think that's why it's so much longer, not the film, the book, that they've got to create more. And the Order of the Phoenix itself being the whole anti-Voldemort establishment, no one's taking them seriously. It's this kind of grounded level, and I love what they do with the whole history of it, talking about the previous members. We mentioned the Gilderoy Lockhart stuff about the hospital. There's scenes with Neville's parents, which obviously never made it. There's a deleted scene with Hagrid, which hasn't been released, where there's more Neville stuff, and it just adds these layers to the history of it. It ups It ups the stakes for what's to come, and they're a worthy sort of background enemy to the Ministry's propaganda.
Yeah, and it's actually some really good world building stuff in this. I know that there's a scene in this movie where Gary Oldman shares a scene with Daniel Radcliffe where I think it's just before Harry's about to get on the train to go to Hogwarts, and he brings a photo of the Old Order when he was in it. I mean, he's still in it, but this was like going back so many years, and we do get a little bit about Neville's parents. They are referenced and they are talked about and what happened to them. There's just not enough of it, and I mean, I haven't read the last 2 books myself, so I haven't got to the nitty-gritty of it, and I mean, I can't remember the ones that I have read, but I know there's a lot more to do with Neville, and it's a shame that stuff wasn't put in the movies, because everyone loves Neville in the last couple of movies, and it would have been nice to have had that, you know, that tragic backstory for him, which sort of cements the foundation of his character going into those movies. Nevertheless, all the Order stuff's great. We're also introduced to a new character with Tonks. I can't remember the actress's name. I'm going to check that up now. She plays Osha in Game of Thrones. Brilliant actress, and a really, I would say, memorable new character. Again, it's like the whole Neville thing. There's a lot of stuff they cut out from the book with her, and there's a lot of time. That's mostly in the last couple of films, though. I'm looking for Tonks now. Can I find the actress? No, I will have to come back to that. I like her. I like her character. I would have liked more Lupin in this film, and that's the thing. Although it's the shortest film, I think they could have got away with like 10 or 15 minutes more. I think we said this again in one of the other ones, maybe with Goblet of Fire, that I think it would have benefited from a few more minutes just to flesh stuff out, or even just let us get lost in this world. They're bringing in all these new brilliant characters that you want to see more of, but it seems like the plot is at the forefront, and there is a lot of plot in book 5, so I do think they cut it down effectively. However, I think as a new viewer, I mean, myself included, I mean, the amount of times I've come to you and you've used your classic phrase of, well, in the book, I think that's where it really starts kicking in with this one. There's a lot that seems to have fallen to the wayside. Doesn't detract from the viewing experience at all, and you can still understand it, but there's just a few things where I'm sure the book fans just instantly know it, whereas a viewer it might take you a little bit longer to catch up with it.
Yeah, so in the films, in theory, they can only show you the most vital of points. They can't show every little detail, which is just the nature of the industry. And it is a shame to the books. It happens in every single book franchise. And then, unfortunately, with this, it's the lore and the sort of world building, and I'll talk about it a lot more in the Half-Blood Prince. But there's so much of these little things they miss out that just adds these extra dimensions to, and it may or may not be unnecessary to the film. It would, of course, depend on the viewer, of the viewpoint of someone that hasn't read the books first. But it's such a shame that so much was cut, but it's just wrapping my head, and it always has been, that it was the shortest film for the biggest book, whereas Chamber of Secrets is the longest film for the shortest book. And it's the little things that goes, okay, why can't they have 10 minutes extra? I mean, you understand the production of films that me and you both know, Chris, it's they obviously have to stick to the minutes they're given.
Yeah.
But in a blockbuster like this, you can make exceptions, and you can make more exceptions in a Harry Potter than you can in almost anything. And an extra 20 minutes would certainly do no harm to this film.
No, absolutely. And I guess we started talking about new characters and stuff, and there are a lot of new things introduced into this one, so I guess we can go through some now. Let's start off with the main one. Almost a new antagonist in this movie, who's played brilliantly. Let's talk about Umbridge in this one. She is one of the most hateable characters, I would say, since Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I hate this character. Well, I love to hate her, and that's the good thing about the villains in Harry Potter. Most of my favourite characters, now I think about it, are the bad guys, or people who are perceived as bad guys, and she's absolutely one of them. I'm trying to find the actress now. I'm really not doing a good job with this.
Imelda Staunton?
Yes, that's it. Who I'm not really familiar with from any previous stuff. I know she's like a prolific actress. I'm just having a look at her stuff now. I'm guessing, yeah, she's done a lot of theatre. She's done Shakespeare plays before. A lot of TV, mostly theatre work. She's been in a lot of films though. But the way she plays it, like the first time you see this character, you know she's bad news. And I mean, I'd read the book before, so I knew all the things that were going to happen. The scene where Harry has to write lines, "I must not tell lies," and it's a pen that inks it into your very hand, like scratches your skin into your flesh. But one of my favourite little attributes about her, and she does it all the way through the film, is she does like a little giggle kind of thing. It's almost like a hiccup.
The giggle cough.
Yeah. And it's so good. And just the thing she does in this film as well with Trelawney, with Emma Thompson coming back. We loved her in Prisoner of Azkaban. Just the way that she treats her. And there's a great montage in the film. It's probably one of my favourite scenes out of all of Harry Potter, where we see her, she's trying to push for the headmaster role of the entire school, and she's bringing in all these new rules that the ministry have issued. And it's a great scene because she's just being an absolute bitch, and she's just hateful, and she's spiteful, and she's doing all these things, but while she does it, you just can't help but love her because she just plays it so well.
And it's the music as well.
Yes.
We'll talk about the soundtrack later, but that montage scene is incredible. And it's the little things from measuring...
Flitwick, isn't it?
She measures Flitwick's height with a magical... tape measure. That's the one. And when she's splitting up the people kissing, and it's the montage. This is Filch's film as well, where they're trying to catch them out, and the High Inquisitor, and there's like a certificate, and then there ends up being like well over 100 of them. She is just pure evil, and I love that about her. It's such a different take on the dark arts teacher as well.
Yeah,
they're all anticipating this dark arts stuff, and it's like the most basic book for beginners, and they won't be learning anything. She's the ministry through and through, and I just like what they did with it because it adds so much more to the politics aspect of it. But then it sets up this confrontation for a horrific character that does make an appearance again later on, which is almost like a surprise cameo, but not. It's just the most unexpected sort of return you can think of.
Yeah, and it was really unexpected for me watching them again because I couldn't really remember the last couple of films, and I thought she died at the end of this movie because her fate at the end of this one's really kind of murky. We don't really know what happens to her, and then we just see her again in the last movie. I'm sure it's explained in the book, but in the end of this movie, she gets carried away by like a herd of centaurs, and she didn't treat them particularly nicely, and they were trying to kill her, and they were like firing arrows at her and boulders and trying to stampede over her, so God knows what the hell they did to her. But I thought after watching the last ones, we realised that she's in possession of the Horcrux, the necklace, the pendant, and I thought she had it at the time of this movie. So I was watching the movie again, and I was trying to look out for it. I thought that was the reason that she was a complete bitch, was that it's almost like the One Ring from Lord of the Rings. It like corrupts you when you wear it, and I thought that's why she was like that in this movie, but apparently not. I think she was always like that, but then she just gets worse when she has the locket. But she just plays it so great, and it is almost like just like a fist pump cheering moment at the end once the centaurs take her away, because for the whole movie you want something to happen to her. When it finally happens, it's a great moment. But as you said, from like the montage, and even Filch as well, who's is like a fan favourite character, but it fits his role that he would side with her because he's very old school. We learned that in Philosopher's Stone, where he talks about the old detentions, the old punishments would see you hanging by your thumbs in the dungeons. He's always been that kind of character. So when this person comes in that's challenging all these rules, that's high on punishment and just really just a nasty piece of work, it makes sense that Filch would gravitate towards someone like that.
Yeah, and it's so nice to see him get a bit of more screen time. In 4, he's got the sort of the canon moments. 3 he's kind of disappeared, but in this it's just being a part of the montage. The same goes for Malfoy. He didn't really have anything to do until the 6th film, but he kind of gets a neat little sort of role with Filch as being part of the High Inquisitorial Squad, which is essentially just Slytherins plus Filch trying to take out everyone else. But I just like the angle they take with Hogwarts, where it's being infiltrated by the government, because we do kind of get that today. Not necessarily at our schools when we were there, but you do get these schools where there is interference, there are sort of agendas that they do push across, and it's just fascinating to see it in a product like Harry Potter, because at the end of the day it is a kids' film / book, but it's dealing with such adult themes, and with the introduction of Voldemort, it's very, very much the sort of politics, the sort of Winter Soldier of the Harry Potter films, where not knowing who to trust, these subplots going everywhere, and at the same time they're introducing so much, and for the screen time there is of 2 hours 20, they do so much with it, especially leading up to the future films.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you were talking about there, like, the inquisitorial stuff. I want to talk about the Room of Requirement and Dumbledore's army, because just when you think you've seen everything there is to see at Hogwarts, they'll surprise you. And I actually think one of the Room of Requirement itself is one of the most fascinating inventions in the Harry Potter franchise. It throws back to Prisoner of Azkaban again with the whole Marauders map and how you can't see the Room of Requirement on there. Comes into it again in the last movie. And it's just awesome to see. It's like a great piece of magic how this one room can open to anyone who needs it, and the interior of the room will be outfitted depending on the person who finds the room. I think that's a really cool idea, and it's nice to see it in the movie. And it does offer one of the best sort of bits of character, really, with Harry Potter, where he steps up to be a teacher. It's nice to see how all the students are like backing him in this one, because in some of the other ones they were very scared of him, they didn't know what to make of him, and he doesn't want to be a teacher himself. He feels very out of his depth. He even says, he has like a great speech, I think it's when they go to Hogsmeade, and he says that, you know, when you're there and people are dying around you, you can't make a mistake, it just sort of happens. I never planned for any of this stuff to happen, but it's nice to see everyone rally behind him, and that's what happens in the last movie as well. It's nice to see. He's training everyone up. There's some great moments with the whole Patronus spells where they're all learning. Neville's not that great with it, and ultimately it culminates into what was set up in the previous movie, where we talked about that, you know, as kids get older, the whole relationship thing, and that's really where it sort of started to come in with Goblet of Fire. In this one, Harry gets his first kiss with Cho Chang, and I remember that being a massive moment from the book as well, and especially when you were watching it around that time as well, although I think it was a bit they kind of messed with the release schedules with these ones, didn't they? I think they had like 2 years between each movie at this point, so the actors themselves kind of went way older than they are in the book. But I think it's a necessary step in the direction of Harry, and I think this is one of the most fascinating films out of the 8 movies surrounded with the Harry character. I would say that Half-Blood Prince, to me, is personally more of a Draco Malfoy movie, but we'll get to that when we get to the review. This one, to me, is definitely one of the most Harry-centric ones, and I think he gets all the fascinating things, whether it's trying to repel Voldemort from his mind, but actually stepping up and trying to be a leader, like a teacher role in this. It's really nice to watch.
Yeah, and given of what's to come, it makes sense for him to be in this position. The whole Dumbledore's army of training everyone. You get Neville finally sort of doing things. That sounds really nasty, but in the 4th one, he puts his hand up, and that's the biggest character development he's had at that point, to answer a question, which is due to his parents. The whole Dumbledore's army stuff is clearly him, you know, doing it in their honour. He wants to fight, he wants to do what's good, and I love the route they take him on, because he completely 180s to when he's the chubby kid saying why always me on top of the sort of skeleton bones, whereas now he's doing spells, he's fighting Death Eaters outright up front, and even conquering 1 or 2 of them. And we'll go into later with the introduction of Bellatrix, that adds a lot more to his sort of parents' legacy. But I just love it, and the Room of Requirement, what I find intriguing is we finally get to see it in this film, but it is mentioned before, not necessarily the films, but in the Goblet of Fire, Dumbledore sort of talking, he says, I was once looking for a toilet and a door opened. So the hints were there, and obviously JK like destroyed it and made it a key component, because it's substantial importance to this film, substantial importance to the 6th film with Draco, and it's a Horcrux hiding place in the 7th one. So really, in terms of a location, or albeit a part of Hogwarts, this is one of the sort of biggest introductions there
It's
are.
probably the most important, yeah. And I mean, if we talk about the people involved ourselves, it's most of the same ones we've seen. We do get a new character, though, new student, which is kind of prominent from this point onwards with Luna Lovegood. And I think the actress herself, I think she was a big Harry Potter fan, and I don't know if she wrote to J.K. Rowling. I think she had like a lot of problems growing up. I think she was like, suffered with anorexia, and I think she, really connected with the Harry Potter books. And I don't know whether it was J.K. Rowling who said, like, would you like to be a part of the films? I think I did hear that in an interview somewhere, which was really nice of her to do that. And I mean, she plays it great. I can see. Oh, go on. Sorry.
I was going to say that the story is actually fascinating with Luna. So the whole writing stuff. Apparently, J.K. Rowling obviously used to get a lot of fan mail. You would in her position. And there's this girl. They say, "I am Luna Lovegood." She was talking about her life, saying how she sees herself as her, and she basically is her. And 15,000 people auditioned to become Luna, and genuinely, J.K. Rowling didn't have a say in it. But when she found out, when they cast Evanna, I think it's Evanna Lynch, her name is, she's come up to J.K. Rowling and says, we used to send letters to each other. She's like, I'm the one that used to say I was Luna, and apparently, I don't know if she said she cried, but J.K. Rowling said she got really emotional at that point. And she's also said that is the only character in the films that she sees, that she reads the book in the voice of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously it's different for us, but I suppose if you've written these books and you go back and look at them and you've now got an actor's voice over your own, that's saying a lot. And I don't think you could possibly find any of a Luna. She's so good in it. And it's such a different character what we've seen before as well at Hogwarts.
Yeah, it is, and I can initially see some people finding her a bit of annoying, because she is a very different student to the ones we've seen before, very different way of speaking. But she does have a big connection, and she has that connection with Harry Potter as well through the Thestrals, I think they're called, aren't they? The sort of like skeletal Pegasus things, where you can only see them if you've witnessed death before, and she helps us introduce us to those. It gets another throwback at the end when they see the archway during the big climax of the film. So she is a good character, and she is almost like imperative to the rest of the film, especially her dad as well when we get to Deathly Hallows Part 1. She's a really nice character. In terms of other characters that are introduced, I think we need to talk about another one of the big ones, Bellatrix Lestrange, played brilliantly by Helena Bonham Carter. I was just checking on IMDb as well before we did this, and if I find the actress's name,
Helen McCrory,
who plays Narcissa Malfoy in the preceding movies, was originally going to be cast as her, but she was pregnant at the time, couldn't make it, so they cast Helena Bonham Carter. I think that was probably a smart decision. Not to say that she wouldn't have been able to have played it, but we've seen Helena Bonham Carter in so many movies before, and she just has that energy. She just has that. She is menacing in some parts, but she has that playful quality to her. She's almost like a Harley Quinn kind of character. How you see the joy in all this trauma and just horrific stuff she's doing. She'll kill someone and she'll run away like singing about it, like she does at the end of this movie. She plays it so well, and one of my favourite scenes in it is where she breaks out of Azkaban at the end, and it's like the camera pans up and she just cackles. She is like the archetypal witch character. Like if you think of a witch like the Wicked Witch of the West from Wizard of Oz, right next to it has got to be Bellatrix Lestrange in terms of how she plays it. And I do question how she got out of Azkaban, though, because I think flying around, I couldn't tell if they were Death Eaters or if they were the Dementors, because I know the Dementors guard Azkaban. They must be the worst prison guards in the history of anything, unless she's sort of like disapparated and just teleported away from there. But all her scenes are great. She just completely cements herself as a staple character in the Harry Potter franchise, and ultimately brings about the death of one of our favourite characters in the franchise.
I love Bellatrix Lestrange.
Yeah.
The first time she comes on screen, she's licking the Dark Mark tattoo, which is a sign of obviously being a fan. She is absolutely mental in a good way. And every time, you're right about the cackling, she is the sort of the ideological witch of the 1800s. They'd have tried to drown her in a bathtub or something like that. What they used to do to witches, it's crazy if you read what they used to do. But she's just pure evil, and Helena Bonham Carter looks like she's having the time of her life while she's filming it. It's just everything of screaming, being the kind of crazy hooded one. Her hair is the epitome of the actual character. She's gone mental in prison. She's so devoted to her cause. I just love seeing her on the screen, and she's used so well. You don't get too much of her. Instead, you're left wanting a lot more, and it's absolutely great. And going back to the Dementor thing, the reason they are guarding Azkaban is because since basically after Voldemort first fell, they used Dementors to guard Azkaban. When Voldemort rose again, because they're so similar in terms of the darkness and feeding off fear and stuff, they automatically become on his side. So they don't really care that Azkaban's been broken into. At this point, they've basically turned allegiance, which is why in the later films they are kind of helping out Voldemort.
Yeah.
But that's, again, something the film can't really explore. But it does look really stupid when there's just a gigantic chunk missing out of Azkaban. They're all just standing there doing nothing. I know they're blind, but still. But
yeah, that always used to confuse me, you see, but now you've sort of highlighted that out again. It explains it better in the book. That makes a lot more sense now. But
it's just one of those things. It happens in everything. World building is so much harder to do on film than it is on paper.
Yeah.
And it's just naturally in a 740-page book, you can't translate into 120 minutes.
But no, just Helena Bonham Carter's just great. I mean, she's such a versatile actress. You see her in films like Fight Club or The King's Speech, for example. And then however many Tim Burton films she did, like where she plays Mrs. Lovett in Sweeney Todd, which actually is probably the closest character I can think of hers to Bellatrix Lestrange, but she does make the role of her own. And you do look forward to seeing her in every appearance that she's in. She gets a little bit to do in Half-Blood Prince. She gets some great moments in that, but I think ultimately she culminates in Harry Potter Part 1, where she does get one of my favourite moments in the franchise, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. So that's really it for new characters. I guess we can sort of talk about events in there now, as this is sort of a, general discussion. I think we should bring it up now, just to get it out of the way, because I don't have many negative things to say about the Harry Potter franchise, but this movie and the book itself has one of my just least favourite things. I hate it every time I see it. Let's talk about Hagrid's half-brother Grawp. Grawpy. I hate this guy. I hate everything about him. It's mostly the design, and the CGI is fucking abysmal in every way. It's just like CGI. It's like, you remember the special editions of Star Wars, like the first one that ever came out, where they added Jabba the Hutt into it, and it's like just so out of place and just looks like it shouldn't be there. That's exactly the feeling I get every time I see Grawp in this movie. In the book, you can kind of allow it. It did kind of throw me off in the book when I read it initially. But at least in the book, there's like this huge backstory involving the giants themselves and how Hagrid discovered him and rescued him, which I guess gives it a little bit more credence in the book. But in the film, because we're used to Hagrid. We've seen him from Harry Potter, the first Harry Potter movie, and then we see a half-brother. We're expecting something very similar to Hagrid, like maybe a bit more giant-like, maybe taller, maybe broader. But this was... I can't believe that from concept art to film, this got okayed. It really bewilders me, and it's just so out of place. I almost wish it wasn't in the movie.
He's nothing like Hagrid as well. And it's the design. It's just... Okay, I get if you want to try and CGI it, but could they at least try and, make it decent CGI? I get 2007 is different, but you can find films from 2007 with far superior CGI. In fact, you could think Star Wars 3 in 2005 has got far superior CGI and characters.
And they used something similar. It wasn't motion capture, but I think when I read it on IMDb, it was a technology they developed that was very similar. If we just look at that before this movie, even Jar Jar Binks, and I don't want to raise the spectre of Jar Jar Binks from The Phantom Menace, but the CGI in that at some points holds up very well. And Gollum from Lord of the Rings came out 4 years before this, and I watched the Lord of the Rings movies earlier this week. It still holds up. It's fantastic CGI. I really don't know what went wrong, especially in such a high budget film like this done by Warner Brothers. It's almost like they were running out of time and just throwing something together. And I was talking before we hit record, but this is now with the benefit of hindsight. Now we've had Game of Thrones. I think that they should have done something similar to how they do the giants in that, where it's a person in makeup, in costume, but they just blow them up in proportion to make them look really tall. I think if they'd done something similar to that, maybe put makeup on them to make them look more giant-like. I mean, we see what the giants look like in the final couple of Harry Potter movies, so maybe if they'd sort of like scrunched the face up a bit more, made it look more like a giant, made it a lot taller than Hagrid, but still have it be an actor playing him. And he doesn't even have to say anything, because Grawp doesn't really say anything, does he? He's kind of a mute all the time. I think that would have worked a lot better, but I don't know. It's just the design just really throws me off every time I watch it.
Yeah, and the problem is it comes from a good subplot that Hagrid's not been there for months, and you want to know why. And it's just this brilliant sort of few lines where Dumbledore sent me to sort of parlay with the Giants, and that itself is adding a lot more sort of dynamic, especially to the Order of Phoenix politics, where they're trying to get people to pick sides, and I just came back with Grawp, and it's there like. And the other thing, you have to wonder, did the awful design of Grawp lead to them not using the Giants as much as they wanted to in the last film? Because
or at least changing them up somewhat.
Yeah, because I'm guessing there's probably negative reception to Grawp all around. It just didn't feel right to the Harry Potter films. It didn't fit in with anything. I wonder if that played a hand in perhaps not using the Giants as much. But then again, we see them only in darkness in the later films. But they do look far more menacing and better.
I was going to say, I love the designs of them in the last couple of Deathly Hallows films.
But ironically, they choose to get rid of Grawp from the Deathly Hallows, who does make it into the book.
Yeah.
Which might say a lot, not necessarily about the budget, but about decisions from the fifth film.
Absolutely. I mean, is it a big part of the film? Because he does kind of come back in it towards the end. With
it's mainly
Umbridge,
with the Umbridge, yeah. But I suppose, I think this was the films where sort of Hagrid, in the first three, he's very prominent. In the fourth, he's got a minor subplot with Olympi. In the fifth, they kind of say, oh, Hagrid's not here yet. And he grew up kind of is important, but I'm guessing they cut probably the majority of his important scenes.
Yeah.
But he's irrelevant to the actual film, so I bet if it weren't for the Umbridge scene, they might have just got rid of him completely.
Yeah, and it is a shame, but it doesn't detract from my enjoyment of the film one iota. I mean, I love this film to death, but every time he does come on screen, I'm like, ugh, like there is that slump every time he comes on the screen, but it's only a little point. What would you like to talk about now? Do you think we should talk about Snape with the whole occlumency thing?
Yeah.
Big scene in the movie. Any scene with Snape in is a good scene, in my opinion, and although we save the bulk of the flashbacks, the very tragic flashbacks, which I'm sure we're going to talk about at great lengths when we get to Deathly Hallows Part 2, this is where we first start to see elements of his history, which already sets the cogs in motion for that moment in Deathly Hallows, and it's a great scene. Dumbledore enlists the help of Snape. He wants Snape to take Harry aside and teach him and to practice keeping Voldemort out of his mind, because all the way through the movie, Harry has seen visions of Voldemort. He's worrying that he sees himself in Voldemort, which is great setup again for the fact that Harry is a Horcrux. It does lead to that moment earlier on in the film as well, where we see Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort in a smart business suit on the station, which is a hilarious scene to watch. But it's nice that Snape does that, and what we later find out with Snape, you can see him absolutely doing that and trying to protect Harry in some way. But we get elements of, James Potter, and that he wasn't the nice guy that we always thought he was. Him and Gary Oldman, I'm just calling him Gary Oldman now, him and Sirius as kids used to bully Snape a lot. And that's why we get the moment where, one of my favourite lines in the Harry Potter films, where Alan Rickman says, "Your father was a swine." And you really feel it, and you start to feel sorry for Snape, and it's a great moment, it's a great character moment, and I also love to see that stuff where Harry is trying to keep Voldemort out of his mind, which we know that he doesn't at the end. He fights through it, but there's that great moment towards the end, just after the duel, where Voldemort does get into his head. Yeah,
the possession scene's great, and what I love of this Snape is he's so sparingly using this, but the occlumency, I can't pronounce it. The lessons,
yeah.
the lessons are great, and they do have this dynamic, and what they cut out from this, which I will talk a lot more in detail about in Deathly Hallows Part 2, is in that scene, Lily comes over and tells James to stop bullying Snape, stuff like that. And
see, that would have been nice.
And Snape calls her a mudblood. And yeah, so at this point, Harry is completely unaware that he likes Lily. I'm jumping the wagon here.
Yeah.
But that's later, sort of. There's
that would have been great.
There's a really nice part in Deathly Hallows Part 2 in Snape's memories, which I'll talk about then. But they cut out that, and they might have just done it to make Snape feel more empathetic as the kid that got bullied. But
yeah,
it adds the whole dynamic to the Lily stuff. Again, it's for a different conversation, but it's so nice to kind of get the flashbacks, because James has been built up as this amazing Quidditch player, this really good guy. Everyone loves James Potter, and it's just Snape's just a twisted evil man, whereas he's just being outright bullied here by them, and it adds character development to Snape.
Yeah, definitely, and I can't remember what Harry says to him, but he says something towards Snape at the end which just makes him snap, and he just says, "Get out." And it's a great moment because we know they've always had that feud even from the first movie, but it's nice to see it start to culminate in this one, which we know where it leads to in the last one, but we'll talk much more about that when we get to it. I think we just need to hit on the ending now, the whole prophecy thing, which, as a casual viewer of these films, I know I've read the book, the whole prophecy thing still confuses me, how there's this room full of prophecies, who makes them, why are they there, why are they kept there, why are they trying to get it, because all the way through the movie Lucius is like, don't you want to know why you couldn't be killed, why Voldemort couldn't kill you that night in which he killed your mother? And I'm like, well, Dumbledore kind of told him in the first movie and in the second movie and in a lot of the movies. Like, Harry knows. Why is this prophecy a big deal, and why are they fighting over it? Why is there a big archway with a portal in the middle? I'm sure all this stuff is emphasised in the book, but as a casual viewer, when it gets to the climax of the film, I do think that apart from the duel and the big pivotal moment where Sirius dies, that whole bit before it just feels very weird to me and kind of out of place, and I'm not really sure what's going on or why I should care.
The answer, sure, is
read the book is the answer, I'm sure.
The prophecy is explained in the book. The veil isn't, which I love because it's just so mysterious, and that works in its favour. You don't need a backstory for something like that. But I could talk about in detail the prophecy stuff. There's a big subplot that involves Trelawney, which they get rid of. It explains a lot. But it's just one of those that it didn't really make it through. They didn't make it clear to the audience. Again, this might be them sort of running for time, where they had to cut things out because it takes a few lines to develop why they need Harry for that. Otherwise, you think Voldemort could have just walked into the Ministry and took it at any time of any day. But again, that's because they decided not to, which is maybe a questionable feature of the film. But it does lead to some brilliant moments, especially them of intrigue. They are in the Department of Mystery, so I guess some things are meant to be best left mysterious.
And reintroduction of Lucius Malfoy again, which is no bad thing.
Who's he's finally revealed to be a Death Eater in the fourth one, but we finally get to see him just doing things in this.
Yeah. And also, we said we were going to talk about this, but the costumes of themselves, the Death Eaters, way more improved in this one.
They have these incredible masks. They're kind of silver. I think each one's unique to the Death Eater. It just gives them a bit of edge. They look very dapper. They took away the KKK hoods just to make them normal hooded people, because they look like idiots if they were flying about. I think this is the one where, by bringing in David Yates, they probably sat down and says, right, you're going to carry us through. Everything we do now is going to be designed to match the future films. The Dementor has a very minor costume change. You can't really tell, but they stick with the 5th version in the 7th film rather than the Prisoner of Azkaban version. So I think this is just the one where they sat down and says, we're going to get everything nailed now. Yeah. And I suppose they did, so credit for them for not changing director again.
And the look of the Death Eaters themselves, I think I compare them to the Immortals from the film 300. Same kind of silver masks with the face design on there in the black costume, the black hoods. Very similar to that, but they really work. And as you said, if they did sit down and they completely nailed the look on everything from here on in. Let's talk about the Sirius death. And there's really only 2 major plot points we need to talk about, and then we'll touch on the soundtrack, and then we'll round out from there. Like the Cedric Diggory death, it's so over so quickly, and I don't know if that's a bad thing. For me, with death scenes, I love my long drawn out remorseful death scenes, like Gandalf's death in the first Lord of the Rings film, or Boromir's death, where they really linger on it and they really make you feel the emotion. But on the flip side, when you have a very quick death, it feels like you're in the moment. Like, 1 minute they're fighting, then all of a sudden Avada Kedavra and Sirius is gone, and he fades into the, what did you say it was, the veil? Is that what it's called? The audio cuts out. I think the music kicks in, but you don't hear the screams of Harry, but you get all the emotion. Lupin's holding him back, and bearing in mind, this isn't just Harry's godfather that's dead. This is also Lupin's best friend he's known since child. And you can what's his name? David Thewlis plays that so beautifully, where you can see he's just holding back tears, but he's having to be strong in that moment to hold back Harry Potter. And that's where I mentioned earlier where Helena Bonham Carter's running off and singing, and just the whole scene's just great, but it's just over so quick. And I'm torn whether I like it, because I think that I would have loved like a long drawn out scene with Sirius, but I guess when you're in the moment, it makes sense for it to be over that quick, and then, you know, we've got to move on to the whole Dumbledore Voldemort part.
What I love with this is, again, this ties into Bellatrix, Sirius Black's her cousin. They established that earlier on in the film of the whole tapestry of black.
And they actually, I can't remember how many names was it. Was it 70?
Yeah, I
or
found out
the entire family tree.
J.K. Rowling came up with the family tree of 70 names and gave details to every relationship. Obviously, you have to do situations like that. What people aren't aware of is that Tonks is also related to Bellatrix. It's her auntie. Sirius is her first cousin removed, if that makes any sense. But the Sirius death, I know, I get what you mean with the whole being quick and long, but what I love about this is 30 seconds before, he's dueling with Harry and he says, nice one, James. He says it like that because they don't make it clear in this, but he's trying to live his life through Harry because he sees James and Harry so much. So it's a nice sort of throwaway line, that one. And Harry's sort of buzzing, you know, he thinks he's like his dad. 20 seconds later, just Bellatrix just Avada Kedavra, straight outright killing. The way he dies as well, I think, which adds so much more sort of layers to it, it's almost like you sort of accidentally clip your finger on like a window. He just kind of shakes his hand, but he's dead and goes through the veil instead. And it's so well done. The soundtrack's amazing at this point, and the Lupin stuff I'm happy brought, because that is a key thing people forget. It's Lupin's only sort of friend that's left. Of the four Marauders, one's a Death Eater and two of them are now dead, and he's seen it right in front of his eyes, and everyone else has seen it too, and it just adds so much more to the scene. And then it builds up Bellatrix as a villain, which leads to the instruction of Voldemort saying you've got to mean it when doing these curses.
And to me, that part, as a Star Wars fan, it's almost like that Luke Skywalker moment in Return of the Jedi where he's about to kill Vader. It's like when he's wailing on him, and it's that moment where he is right on the threshold of becoming exactly what Voldemort is, with Voldemort in his head saying, you know the spell, just say the words. And you do see, and Daniel Radcliffe in this scene, was it this scene where you were talking about the agony of him in the possession scene or something, where it was too extreme and they asked him to dial it back? Or was that another scene?
I think it was Sirius's death, where they just said it was inaudible, so put the soundtrack over the top.
But no, he plays it really well in this scene, and you do see that dilemma in his face, because he has all the right to kill Bellatrix in this scene. It's the one, I would say Sirius is just like the father figure that Harry never really had, and he's gone. And in this moment, he could do it. He could so easily do it. And then this leads us to probably my favourite bit of the film, when Voldemort shows up again, Dumbledore enters the room, and you know they're about to throw down. And oh boy, do they throw down in this movie. This, when you think of wizarding magic, in all the films, we don't get a great sense. You get like the whole bit before this with the Order where they're fighting, and you kind of have the flash of the wands, but it's kind of just it's there. We have the dueling club in the earlier movies, and even in the last few with Voldemort, I would say that the ending fight between them isn't very impressive. Even in Goblet of Fire, it's just kind of a beam of light. This is the wizarding fighting battles that I always wanted to see in the films, and the staging, the special effects, just how all the spells they're throwing at each other. These are two wizarding titans that are just going toe to toe, and it's my favourite scene in the film. And this is where we talked about sort of Richard Harris and how we really liked him as Dumbledore, but we couldn't see him doing any of this stuff. Completely agree. It's an amazing scene. I love it so much, and they really take into consideration the set they've got of the Ministry of Magic, and they do some great things in there. One of my favourite shots is where Voldemort just lets out that kind of scream and flexes, and all the glass shatters around him. It's incredible. It's simply incredible. It's one of the best scenes in the Harry Potter films. It's
the Rock versus Stone Cold of the wizarding world. Everyone waited for it. It finally came.
Which one's the Rock out of the two of them? Would it be Dumbledore?
No.
I like Voldemort more, and he's bald.
So Stone Cold. They're both bald.
Oh shit! Yeah, good point.
Either way, it makes one hell of a match.
Oh yeah.
But what I love about it is it's not just the fact they're dueling; it's the way in which they duel. They're using stuff like transfiguration. They're using magic stuff that we haven't seen before, and you know, Voldemort with his perverted laughing when he brings the snake up and sort of Dumbledore just stabs it with the wand. It's this incredible scene, and it's 2 minutes long, but it's the most memorable 2 minutes of the entire film. And you want to see more, and then you got to sit back and think that, okay, Harry's a kid, he can't really do this. Their fight was crap in Deathly Hallows Part 2, but I'll talk about it when we get there. I'm happy nothing can equal this, because they shouldn't. These are the two greatest wizards of all time. Maybe in Fantastic Beasts 5 we're going to get the Dumbledore Grindelwald duel, which is the most famous in their history, which is how Dumbledore got the Elder Wand. There's so much they could do there. I just want to see more wizarding duels like this, but I'm happy we didn't, because it gives so much more levity to this rather than making it a boring, repetitive thing like the Expelliarmus versus Killing Curse Wave of Light.
Yeah, definitely. And what's great as well is in the other films, like even when we see Richard Harris, like we see him and he's kind of like the wise old sage, and we know that he can do great magic. We just haven't seen it. We know he can do it, and it's in this moment. And if I'm going to compare it to another character from another franchise, it is like the Yoda character, but in this, it's justified to see him fighting. I would argue that, you know, when we get to Attack of the Clones and we see Yoda flipping around like a little frog all over the ceilings, that completely cheapens the character and takes away all the teachings that he had in like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. But in this, you are waiting for that moment, and it makes sense for Dumbledore to step up in this moment where Voldemort has set foot in the Ministry of Magic. He's about to take Harry, and we know in the later ones that he can't. He's been, you know, raising him like a pig for slaughter. He can't die at this moment. There's still more for him to do. It makes sense for him to step up, and it makes sense for us to see him use magic. Him being a wizard, there's no kind of things where his teachings speak louder than his actions. I think both of them with Dumbledore go hand in hand, and I'm glad that we do get to see this. We get to see a bit more of his magic as well in the next movie, but this is ultimately the major moment for the character.
Yeah, and what I love most about the duel is he stays in character, and he's the older man and he's using his wisdom. You don't see him running around as much. He's kind of there. Every time Harry tries to get up to help him, he just chucks him back into the wall. He doesn't want Harry to have any part of it, which is the mental figure in him. Whereas Voldemort, you know, is going mental. He's laughing, cackling, doing his evil stuff. Because it would be very easy to switch them out of character, like the Yoda comparison. If the Yoda using the Force stuff was great, I thought, in that. I know this is a different film. But the second he gets that lightsaber out, it's like, this is not you. Shouldn't be how it's done. Whereas Dumbledore, it is how it should be done. They nail it. The same with, this is the first time we see Voldemort duel outright as well. You would think of him trying to think of the million shards of glass he was trying to stab at one man. How brutal that could be, or using the Fenderfire curse of a gigantic fire snake on someone. Each spell is sort of in recognition to the character that's doing the spell, and that's what I think works in its favour. And you don't get too much of it as well. You get maybe 4 or 5 key points of the duel and then it's over, rather than just have it wander on for too long.
No, it's completely the right length. I mean, you do want to see more, but sometimes less is more, and that's what makes it memorable. Like, I remember every move, every spell in this fight. And then after this fight, we get a great scene of Harry being possessed. The music in this scene, and we'll talk about that. That'll be the last thing we talk about in our review. The music in this scene's great. The editing's great. And we talked about Voldemort a lot in Goblet of Fire and how great Ralph Fiennes is. There's literally like half a second of a moment in this possession sequence where he makes like a noise like "Tah!" and like a really quick flash. He's having the time of his life playing this character, and I know it's a serious, like, heartfelt moment where Dumbledore's trying to exercise Harry, but every time it comes on I just crack up. It's just every time. It's just, I love Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort so much.
The possession scene is fantastic because it's sort of hinted at throughout the entirety of the film. I'm going to say it for the first time in the books. I actually haven't said that phrase yet. I'm so proud.
No, I'm impressed.
I've lasted 58 minutes. It's literally, he possesses Harry. Harry fights out. It's in 2 lines. And
oh, really?
when I was rereading, I thought there might have a big deal, whereas obviously in the film, I think this is similar to Snape's Memories, which I'll go on about. David Yates nails it by using previous footage from the other films to enhance it. We get the whole Harry's montage with Hermione and Ron, the whole family stuff that defeats Voldemort. But we get that in Snape's Memories, and it's this extra dynamic of Harry saying, you know, I'm not afraid. You're the loser. You don't know what love is. And none of that's in the book, which I think was fascinating. And in the book it's in and out so quick, whereas in this it's everyone runs out to see Harry possessed, and when he does defeat Voldemort, you do get the immortal Cornelius Fudge, he's back line.
He's just so incompetent, isn't he, just as a minister?
Yeah, he's just this bubbling idiot. It reminds me of all of politics today.
Yeah, oh boy, yeah.
And that sets up the sixth film well, because they finally realise that Voldemort is back after everything. But the possession scene, the soundtrack in that is probably one of the best songs of the Harry Potter franchise.
Yeah, and let's talk about the soundtrack now. The ending itself of the film, it's just I can't actually really remember the last scene of this film. I think it does end fairly abruptly. I remember it ended on a happy note though, because the music that plays at the beginning of the credits. But yeah, so we get yet another composer in this one. I'm just having a look for him now. Oh god, so unprepared. Nicholas Hooper. And actually, when we did our Battle of the Brackets review of Greatest Soundtrack, this was one of your nominations. And listening to it again, I love the stuff that Alexandre Desplat wrote from 6 onwards. I think he did the last 3, didn't he?
Nicholas Hooper did Half-Blood, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're
and
right.
Desplat did the last 2.
Hooper's stuff from Half-Blood Prince I'm not really fussed about. It works for the film, but it's nothing memorable. I would say out of all the other composers that follow John Williams, this is the closest to John Williams' sound and creating themes for characters than out of all of them. You talked about the Umbridge theme earlier. Completely fits her character. It's perfect, and it does sound very John Williams-y in style. A scene we didn't even talk about, another one of my favourite scenes, is the Order riding on the broomsticks through London. The music that plays through that is fantastic. There's no music during the duel, which is very strange, but I guess it wants to use the sound effects in that scene itself. But the possession sequences, so the soundtrack way more than me. I don't know track names and everything like that. I just remember moments. But I would say personally, to me, it is the closest one to coming to the levels that John Williams attained through the first 3.
Yeah, and to me it's everything in this. Even the Room of Requirements got its own theme, which is through the brilliant montage we mentioned earlier, but sort of Filch Malfoy in that, very Lunar-esque. It's such a brilliant soundtrack because everything is of importance. I haven't even talked about the Weasley brothers' sort of exits into destroying Umbridge with the fireworks. That's got its own brilliant song. The Dumbledore's army stuff, the possession, but the entirety of that final third is, I wouldn't say very Williams-esque, but in terms of sort of filling in his shoes, this is certainly the one that does it.
Yeah.
And I would have been very intrigued to see what John Williams did do, because I think this may be one of possibly 2 soundtracks that John Williams couldn't have improved that were in the Harry Potter films, which is a very big thing to say.
Yeah.
But I think this is so well done. Especially Umbridge. It just, with the bright pink, the music, Hooper absolutely nailed it. And the Half-Blood Prince we'll talk about when we get there, but there's some really, really good stuff in there. It's just a shame he didn't stay for the final 2, although they didn't exactly get a bad person to fill his place either.
Oh no, I love the soundtracks to the last 2 Harry Potter films, but no, I think that'll pretty much do it. I guess if I'm just going to mention another scene from the film which we didn't really talk about, I love the scene where Trelawney's about to get sacked and Dumbledore steps in, and Minerva McGonagall as well brings her back inside. That's a really nice moment. But yeah, other than that, I think we've pretty much said everything. It does bewilder me that this has only got a 78%. Why people perhaps don't like this one as much. I don't know if we said at the start as well, but this is the only film in the franchise that isn't scripted by Steve Kloves. This was written by Michael Goldenberg. I don't know. I still love this movie. There's a lot of great stuff in there, but it does feel like that first bridging movie, especially Half-Blood Prince as well. Like, those 2 to me feel like one big bridge which takes you from Goblet of Fire into the last 2. But although it gets very political, it doesn't get up its own arse, it doesn't get too bogged down in it. It's still a great adventure film. There's still a lot of whimsy in there and a lot of darkness too. There's a lot of great moments in this one, so it does confuse me why this one perhaps isn't reviewed as much as the other ones, reviewed as highly, sorry. But no, I pretty much said everything on this movie. If you have, we'll round out.
Yeah, just watch it again. It's one of the films where there's a lot more meaning to it when you think about it, especially when you apply it to the sort of modern world of ISIS, such sort of terrorism. No. I mean this genuinely, that the underlying themes in this are very adult for what this film is.
Yeah, the whole politics getting involved in things it perhaps shouldn't. and having to step up and fight evil. I mean, that's a staple in most things, but yeah, I guess so. I guess you could write a dissertation on this, bringing in like Trump and all that good stuff. But anyway, that'll do it for our review on Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Be sure to comment, subscribe. Let us know what you thought of this movie, the book, the other films, anything to do with Harry Potter. Please do drop us a comment. Tomorrow, we will be going to see Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I am at a 7 o'clock showing. George, I think you're at an 8:30 one, but we'll both be seeing it opening day. Really looking forward to it. I've booked my tickets already, and I checked. It pretty much looks like it's a packed house, so I'm glad I booked my tickets when I did. We will have a live stream review on that on Saturday, so look out for that. We'll have times and stuff on our Twitter and Facebook once we know when we're available. Also, it being Harry Potter month, we'll have reviews on all of the following 3 movies. We talked about doing a video on our predictions for the future Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. There'll be top 10 lists as well. There'll be a special Battle of the Brackets towards the end of the month, so there's a lot of stuff still to come with Harry Potter month. Please do hit that subscribe button. More reactions from me along the way. The trailers have really been ramping up, so a lot of content coming out. But as I said, that will do it for our video today, and until the next one, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.
Mischief managed.